Imagine you're walking along fine, but a vase ends up falling on your head. You literally go into a coma, and when you wake up, everything is dark. But then you say, "No, I want to get out of this darkness." You can get up, but you realize it's a plant. A plant stays still. You receive a system that you can evolve according to what you eat, sunbathing, etc. It went really crazy. So if you like it, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and if you want part 2 of this very moa, you have to put it in the description. I want part 2 or part 2, it doesn't matter. It starts with a very short boy who said that he couldn't even study anymore. He commented that his head was even spinning. A woman comes up and says he needs to relax. After 5 minutes, just 5 minutes of using that free reading, she said he should eat first and asked when he was going to make life easier. She commented that the Sholing at Ailin Wang's house went to extra classes for 2 hours at midday, working a lot more than him. She starts to get very angry, saying that if he can't handle it, that's to help her hang those baskets on the shelf, at least for now. She also asked them to tie the rope properly, or else the strongest wind would make everything fall again. While he was going up the stairs, he called his mother and said that those plants just needed a little love, watering, and sunlight. They are very easy to care for, and he wanted to know why she had to move them, as this was very problematic. Then he starts hanging them and said he wanted to be a plant. He should only sunbathe, drink water, and just grow up. That's the lazy kind of life, and it's very comfortable. But then his mother shows up suddenly, fighting with him because she had told him not to hang like that. She said it could be easier, and she asked him to come down because she would show him again. She got very angry, saying that there were still people who said that children inherited 3 parts from their parents. But she said that it seemed like he inherited everything. She said that he was very young and not motivated, and the only thing he thought about was just sleeping. She said that he thought everything was very simple. She even said that it would be better if he became a plant because it would be much better. He even covered her ears because she was quite angry. A while passes, and he was walking down the street, obviously sleepy. He said everything was fine. Then he was scolded by his mother again until he had a headache. He explained that he really didn't understand where his mother came from. She takes those words, she speaks like a machine gun. There's no way he can stop, and all he can do is stand still, getting shot. He said his mother was like a pea shooter, but a pot from the top of the building ends up falling, and where it literally lands in the head of our protagonist, who was very distracted with sleep, yawning. At the end, the people who were walking around saw what had happened. They even asked to call an ambulance because he was bleeding. The protagonist was imagining he was eating delicious things. He even told his mother that it was very good, and he really ate a lot. But everything he was eating suddenly turned into mud and dirt, and he doesn't understand anything. Then suddenly everything becomes very strange. He wonders what was happening and where he was because it was very dark. He said that the smell was strangely pleasant. He felt as if his arms and legs were tied. He looked up and saw that there was a light there, so he would simply try to go up and see. Until there, he finally manages to get up, and it was a flower. He was more comfortable that way. He said that he finally left, but as he touched his forehead, he realized that instead of his hand, he had literally a leaf. He starts to sway slightly, not understanding what was happening. He wonders why he was like that. He was literally in the middle of nowhere, and he starts to understand what was happening. He became a plant. He literally said that he became a blade of grass, and he asked himself what the hell was happening. It was not possible. He was quite nervous about this situation. He said he remembered going to lunch and then going to school. Then he was practically run over by a flower vase that fell on his head from a great height. He wonders who is so bad at hanging a flower vase like that. It was so simple, and according to them, this person who couldn't put the vase correctly in a very high place is worse than he was. He hoped he didn't die because of a vase that fell on his head. He wonders if he was reborn with a blade of grass. He said he wanted to become a plant at that moment. And then he remembers that moment when he said he wanted to become a plant. At that moment, just enjoy the sun and drink water every day to grow, just a comfortable life. He becomes desperate, asking if this happened because of what he really didn't want to believe. He said he didn't want to be so sincere just because he said it casually. It was not for anyone to be taken seriously, and he asked to please send him back quickly. He wanted to get back to normal, but then he stops suddenly and tells himself to expect according to the web novels. The main characters who are reborn usually have their own system and blood, and the path to becoming a god with his powerful abilities. He wonders where the system was from him, and why there is no sound of notifications also. Then he calls, "Hey system, are you there system? Wake up, no sleep." He starts calling the system in every way, and at the end, he said he had been calling the system for a week, but nothing had happened. He was just a common plant. What bad luck. But he said that the good news is that he doesn't know if it's really a piece of grass, and he has a human head. He said that the bad news is that he was a strapping 2'5" tall young man of some sort. The way he was reborn after literally wishing he was a plant. But he chose a beautiful piece of black earth. He said that the land he was planted in was rich in nutrients, fragrant and tasty. He felt he was growing. Then he looks at the other plants and says that it was just a little crowded, but he said that anyway, everyone was there making progress. But then he noticed something where the sunlight was. He became desperate and called those unfair plants. Why do that? He was literally at rock bottom. He couldn't get the light of the sun. He wondered why that scene seemed so familiar, and he ends up remembering his school. He asked them to move away. He starts fighting with the other plants, saying they were blocking his sun. He didn't manage to sunbathe, so he wanted his right. But then he finally manages to reach it. He gets happy, saying that he can finally see the sunlight at that moment. But then he notices something coming, and he wonders if he was a wild horse. He said that in his past, his parents always occupied and they never took him to the zoo to see these animals. And this is the first time he saw such a creature. It's strangely cute, and for those who don't know, it was a llama. But then he stopped suddenly. He said, wait, he remembered this thing eats grass, and he asked if this animal would eat him. Then she starts to come slowly with her mouth open, drooling with hunger, and he says for her not to eat him. He was begging him. He didn't want to die at that moment. He was too young, but then he realizes that the llama didn't catch him. She literally just caught the matinhos that were around. She just starts to come out while he was in desperate shock for almost being eaten. Then he said that luckily he only took a bite, and it seems like the flowers and plants didn't go together. And then out of nowhere, that animal takes a shit there. Take this present protagonist. He keeps looking at that stinky shit, and he asks if that's where that black earth that he likes so much comes from. It's nutritious. He said that in fact he would grow like a flower in horse shit, because for him, he is a horse. But it is a llama, and he starts vomiting, saying that he didn't believe it because he thought that black soil had a flavor. Delicious, soft, and my God, how can it be like that? He said it couldn't get any weirder than that. And then the flowers were all dancing brightly. He said that everyone was blooming, but he said he was gone too, and he wondered what the hell was that thing, a tooth. Because all the flowers have a ghostly expression when you look at it, and for some unknown reason, a window simply appears in front of him, and he wonders what had happened to him. He ends up remembering when he played. He said that he literally became a carnivorous plant. He said that it's no wonder that everyone in the world is looking at him with strange looks. He was very ugly. But then he says, wait, like suddenly a mirror out of nowhere appeared in front of him, and then when he said that, the mirror simply disappeared, and then a window appeared. Detected host system has flourished, and it has entered the juvenile phase. The host system flowers are now automatically activated. Then he says, oh, I was right. This is a system, and I finally got it right. An animal with a beard and hair appears, saying that he was his companion, the pleasant system. There appears that the proto was Wang. Then P was a big flower monster. He was of rank ordinary rank 0, and he gets nervous. What do you mean he was a mouth monster? Big plant. What do you mean he was an ordinary plant? He is sure he was not an ordinary plant, and he was planted in alpaca dung. He wonders what it was all about. He didn't understand anything. And what was the problem with this Ruan? He wonders if he was in the wrong place. He should be taking over the world. He shouldn't be there at rank 0. He was supposed to be strong, but then he starts saying that the host gains 1 more point of evolution by sunbathing for a minute. Then others appear as another point of evolution by sunbathing, sun, and then he gains 2 more points for absorbing moisture from the soil. He is quite happy, wondering if this evolution of points was good. They are probably used to update and improve it. He said that they were adding up quickly while he was standing there. Then he starts laughing, saying that he has already collected 100 points devolution so quickly. He would be the laid-back king of an integrated shite system. He said that Plant's insignificant people around him were just jealous of him, trying to compete with him for sunlight. Then that animal stranger with hair and beard asks if he now understood how powerful he was. He said that Proto acquired seed evolution points and asks if he would like to improve himself and could he strengthen his main parts flower stem flowers, stems, fruits, and seeds. Then Proto said, "Ah, I got it right. Evolution points are actually used to level up and improve." He said this was great, and he wanted to strengthen his torso, so he wanted to grow taller and sunbathe more. Then the system appears. Evolution achieved for the stem, and it actually begins to grow. The speaking system says that he has grown successfully and has grown Zang 3M. He starts to brag while the flowers looked at him without saying anything. But then Proto suddenly gets nervous, saying that he had used 100 evolution points and only gave an increase of 0.3 or 3m in height. He said that this was terrible. That bearded guy scratching his nose said it was just the first upgrade. If he could find little time, he could accumulate more points and improve them again. Then Proto gets very nervous, saying that that was very annoying. At this rate, when he would overcome those flowers that were above him. But then when he looks at one little bee was passing by, and Proto says that it was a Vispa, but he asked her not to sting him. Then suddenly he gets nervous, telling her to get out because he didn't have any nectar, and he asked why she was buzzing around him. He wasn't in a good mood, so it was supposed to leak there. But while he was talking, she goes into his mouth, and he ends up eating her. He chews and says, what a strange taste. It gets desperate, saying that he accidentally swallowed her, and he had been alive for 17 years, so he had never eaten anything raw like that, much less a giant wasp. He starts to open his mouth, saying that he had to take it off quickly, and he wonders why he didn't feel any bad taste. But even if he didn't, it was better to get her out of there. He wondered if maybe plants didn't have taste. That bearded man came back and said congratulations to the host for completing his first development. He received a treasure chest, but it requires 10 evolution points to finally open that chest. The description of the item is that it could open that chest only if he would have to use a certain number of points to finally open it. The note on the chest told him to make sure to take a shower, change clothes, light incense, and pray for luck, and may fortune be with him. He gets a lot surprised that it was a treasure chest, and he could get it by devouring living creatures. But he realized that in this one, he needed 10,000 evolution points to open a simple chest. He called the system because he was still stingy, and while he needed 10,000, he gained 1 evolution point per minute. He said who suddenly felt that the rate of increase in his evolution points was not that good. So 5 days pass, and he said that finally, it has been 5 days of working hard to sunbathe every day, absorbing the water and nutrients from the soil, and finally, he accumulated 10,000 evolution points. He told the system that he wanted to open that chest immediately. The bearded man said he was spending 10,000 points to open that chest while a strong golden light ends up appearing and dominating the area. After that, the system congratulated the host on obtaining a vine gene. The classification was rank B and asked if he wanted to merge that item that was the root of a tree that was thrown into the ground. He wonders how so. Vine genes, he wonders if he fused with it, would he become a legendary tentacle monster or something? So at least he thought he said the classification was B. This is a classification for plant genes maybe? Then he starts to see what he had, and he said that these are the 6 main parts and the area's correspondence. He ends up asking for the fusion of his root with that new one. Then a strong green energy appears in his hand or in yours on your sheet. The system congratulates the host again, saying that he was escaping the genesis of the vine. Soon after that, a strong and gigantic root ends up appearing the gene from the vine. He can transfer the C into thick vines using them to whip opponents, and Prota tells him to call him a tentacle monster. Then he starts doing various things with his tentacles. I would say his whip. He said that it seems that that vine was very flexible, but then his fingers humans. He even commented that in the future, he could even make a vine dig into the ground and surprise attack his opponents. He said it was a great tactic for a surprise attack. The next time he sees wasps again, he would deal with them in the right way. My God, look what this guy was thinking, poor thing wasp. But then he notices a wasp flying, and he wonders if it was another one. He wonders if he accidentally poked the hornet's nest. But he said this was his opportunity to test his new ability. He calls that lightning whip movement. The whip goes towards quickly from the wasp, but then he realizes that his arms are too short. They wouldn't reach her. He starts talking that everything was fine. He didn't need to rush in dealing with these giant wasps. He just had to wait in case she got approached him. In fact, he could improve this skill, meaning he would make the vine more thicker and longer in the future. That is, he would be very overpowered, but he realized that the wasps were making fun of him. His face smiled at him. He asked her to come closer so she could see what it was like to suffer. He said that way, time he wouldn't lose, and she was supposed to be careful with his little lightning attack. But instead of Prota catching wasp, something else caught, and it was a tongue. The para was in shock, wondering what was happening. He realized that it was a lizard that was passing by, and he had caught his prey. He got very nervous, saying that the lizard had stolen his food, and now he would pay with his life. He ends up launching the lightning attack on Kalango. The Kalango was even nervous because he didn't know which plant was going to get him. Meanwhile, Silver said he wouldn't escape after stealing his food, but then with so much force that he ends up pulling Kalango's tail, splitting in half. The protagonist's own arm ends up throwing Kalango in his face, making him spit out blood. He was quite nervous and scared, and Prota commented that he forgot that lizards could let go of their tails. But he said that it was better than nothing, and he ends up eating the poor Kalango's ass. Then he said that the system didn't give any hints. It seems he could only get the chest reward by eating more living creatures. Complete. He said that there is nothing he can do. There were very few insects there, and not even the only fly appeared there. There were also many piles of manure around where A week passed, and Prota had just caught a beetle. He put the beetle in his mouth slowly until the system congratulates the host and asks him to please open the chest. But for that, he had to have 10,000 evolution points to be opened, and he asked if the prot would want to open it. But the PR was very nervous that he even drooled. He said that he swallowed a dung beetle thinking it was a treasure normal. He commented that he was basically a corpse flower trapped in alpaca dung, and he was no longer there, caring about nothing. He asked that like a flower, he was supposed to open this treasure right away, and he got nothing no less than 20,000 evolution points. Silver said that he was like a flower, although he ate many rolls. Shit. He asked why he still gets evolution points, but at least he didn't lose everything, and he gained 20,000. He said that at least if he obtained plant genes, be it a large caterpillar or a big-headed fly, green, he would eat it right away. That guy says again that he was a flower stem, not an eating item system, and he said that the less he eats, the better the results will be. The PR simply doesn't say anything, and the Kalango on the other side was even running. The black guy said he touched his what, and he still dared to go back there. Proda said he would regret it and started attacking his ability. But suddenly, another tongue appears, and another type of animal appears. It was a giant frog that ate Kalango. Proda, it was very tiny compared to that monstrous giant frog. The frog jumps, apparently heading towards Proda, who said that frog was huge. He wondered if that guy wasn't chasing that little lizard just a few moments ago. How could he suddenly turn around and attack him? He wanted to see if that frog could take a beating. Then the prod ends up giving the frog a root in the face, which ends up falling on its back, all messed up in the ground, but the frog gets up furious with what had happened to him. Eyes were even red, but Proda punches the frog in the face again, which ends holding Proda's root. Proda obviously tries to pull it back, wondering what that frog was. Grand could actually turn his body into stone. Practically, how could he know how to control his vines? He wondered if that frog was some kind of genius or something because he was an animal. He was supposed to be dumb. Instead, the frog's tongue ends up wrapping around Proda, who was observing the situation without being able to do anything. He said that that was a toad spirit. That couldn't be true. He was actually trying to fully unearth the protagonist, and Sapo was actually managing to pull Proda out of the ground. Proda says that it hurt a lot. It felt like his body was being torn apart, and he wonders why it was so painful. He said that the flowers also felt pain, and he starts to think that in the past he sometimes discounted his anger at Flores Silvestre dos Campos, and they probably should have felt the same pain too. He said that this could only be heaven's punishment since he had done it too, and he said that everything was over. He would actually be uprooted, and leaving the earth will definitely lead to its rapid disappearance. Possibly it. He said he didn't expect to die so young, but then he realized something. He realized there was a frog going crazy, and he wonders what that lizard was doing there until the lizard makes a sign of silence for Proda to stay quiet, and Proda doesn't understand anything. How come the animal is doing this, telling him not to make noise? What kind of cruel world he crossed? All the animals there had high intelligence. He sneaks slowly and simply jumps on the frog's head. Suddenly it opens its mouth with its fierce teeth and ends up biting the frog's eye. The frog consequently ends up letting go of Proda and screaming. He simply falls backward while Kalango jumps over the Proda, puts the sheet in your face. Bro, it's a bit strange to say this, but he literally put the sheet in your face, and he ends up raising his roots, his skill, his hand, and he was quite nervous about what he had woven. He ends up catching the frog and lifts it up like it was nothing. He ends up throwing the frog as far as possible to hit the ground. Then it keeps swinging and throwing the frog from one side to the other, hitting the ground. But he realizes that the frog was trying to escape, and Proda tries to catch him, but he can't since he has a limit. He said that he had better run fast because next time he wouldn't survive, and said that he wouldn't bully the flowers again. He gets quite angry, saying that if one flower is very fragile, it is dangerous everywhere. He almost lost his life to a frog and wonders if he could return to his human form. Then out of nowhere, that Kalango simply appears again, and he asked what the problem was. He wanted to know if Para wanted his forgiveness because Para said that thing was brought there because of him. Then the frog starts to pick up that mud and help Proda. Proda starts calling Kalango a rogue, saying that he really became intelligent. He asked if he really knew that well. Considering that he helped him, he would get rid of that frog since he replanted him, and he wouldn't fight with Kalango anymore. Kalango is very happy, and Silver starts saying that that guy looked like understood what he was saying. He understands how to use the environment against the enemy and help replant flowers. That wasn't normal, right? He didn't even know if he was speaking human language at that moment, or maybe the language of Flores. But then Proda realized he was leaving. He didn't even say goodbye to Proda to say he thought he finally found a friend to talk to. But I think he was wrong, and he's left alone watching Kalango leave slowly until he simply catches an insect that was there. Kalango simply turns around and goes back to Proda. He simply flicks Proda on the cheek, who doesn't understand anything. He said that he splashed him with his saliva. and he simply stuck out his tongue and showed it, showing the beetle he had just caught. He said whimper, or in translation, whimper, but I don't know if it should be a noise. But then he shows tongue again, but pointing his little finger at beetle, and the black guy asks if he was waiting for him to eat a beetle from his mouth because he didn't want that. Kalongo just makes a cute face with his tongue out, showing that beetle, and the Prota says, "Oh man, I can't believe a little lizard tried to feed me. Okay, you can put the beetle on the ground, and I'll take care of the rest. I won't touch your tongue." Then the beetle comes closer to the Prota, showing it on his tongue. Man, this is really good. Then Prota ends up taking it and saying that it doesn't matter burrows the dung, they eat it, and a little saliva wouldn't kill it. Evolution is more important. The level's rise really mattered more than nonsense from a goon's saliva. Then that bearded man appears again, talking to the Protax that by devouring a small beetle, he received a chest of random treasures and asks if he wanted to use it. 10,000 evolution points to open. Then the beetle is a little left out because there was a lizard there. The PR explains that it was a small gift from Huang, and PR explains to Kalongo that he got that treasure chest because of the gift he gave. He ends up asking Kalongo if he should open it while Kalongo is without reaction. The intelligent man just observes the situation, and Silver said that it looks like he overestimated a little his intelligence. He asked Kalongo to say just open it or don't open it. Then Kalongo says you can open my friend, and the Prota say did you hear that man, so now you can? You can open it, and the screen appears because he had just won. He won the plant gene was rank B, and the system asked if he would like to do the merge, and Prota gets excited, saying that finally it wasn't just evolution points, and he ends up petting Kalongo, saying that it wasn't bad at all. He was very lucky. He explains that even though it is the same gene as Vinny that he already has, there are options for update and add. It explained that it was almost uprooted by the frog as it didn't have strong enough roots, and he said that like a flower, he chooses to add a new vine, and the man ends up merging with it to become much stronger than before, and the system congratulates because the host finally managed to make the fusion. He could turn that vine into some cool things to finally fight his enemies, and Prota said that he couldn't be a little more generous and give a thicker one because that other vineyard was very small. The bearded man told the young master that he couldn't use a hack there. He accumulated some points of evolution, but he believed it would get bigger later. But Black asks what was wrong with this wasted chat. He asked if the system couldn't be a little more serious while the bearded man spoke to Little Master. He was always very serious, he never joked, but Silver said that anyway he is very lazy to deal with him. He said that he helped the little creep also at least helped him escape from that boring frog. And then after that, Kalongo is showing gratitude by willingly offering food. Silver said that this little thing was nothing Malu because he knew how to be grateful, and he said that everything was fine because in the future, if he encountered any danger, he just had to go to him because he would take care of him. But as a condition, he asked the little Kalanguinho to catch a bug for him every day. Guys, it's a bug. I don't know if it was supposed to be the beetle. He starts thinking he couldn't move his vines and had a very limited reach. But it would be another story if he had a mobile passerby to help him capture some lavis. But the goon looking at him wasn't very supportive of this idea. He doesn't try to explain, very nervous that it wasn't just for him either, right? And he ends up calling Kaling his big brother. He says that the faster he levels up, the more security he can offer. Kalongo gets a little thoughtful, then Pra gives a sigh and says everything was fine, it's resolved. Then he says that he wouldn't disappoint him, and the PR is saying that enough bullshit. He asks if he could call him Yellow from now on. Right, because he didn't have a name, but the Kango makes a really ugly face. I don't think he didn't like it a lot, and he asked what was wrong with that look. Maybe if he didn't like the name, he at least told Kalango to blame his own appearance because he's yellow, but he said it didn't matter. He was one of the best in his high school rocket class, and he even gave him his name, and he was still complaining. A few days pass, and the system congratulates Prota. He got a rank B item, and it was obviously a type of a plant. The system asked if he would want to do the fusion. Proto was quite happy, saying that the yellow one really was his pet. It's only been a few days, and he's already unlocked the new plant genes, and the name was Kang'er, and the seed location was fusion. But he wonders how he used it. But even before he says something, the bearded man ends up activating the fusion, and the system congratulates him again for using the Kang to gene fusion. And the local fusion was of the seed. There more or less said that I could spit, and the para is very disappointed. What do you mean spitting won't cut someone's throat too much? The bearded man said he's not going and asked the little master to open his mouth a little wider and make a sound of vomiting that he would just leave. It was quite simple, and the Proto got quite nervous, so the Proto tried vomit something, and several thorns end up coming out of his mouth. But then Proto seems like he wasn't doing very well, isn't he? Begins Titsur saying that he believed in this bearded ghost, even though it is not the intense pain of a slit throat. Your throat was burning from the scratches that thing made. Then the guy poking your nose said there's a great power. No matter the pain in the throat, he really had an extraordinary power. He said that Kango seemed quite sharp, and if he held it like that, it wouldn't hurt his hands. He would probably end up picking one up and saying that it was surprising because it didn't hurt. Maybe it's because its vines were hard and thick after the update, so he was more resistant in this case. He could release his creativity to use that in some ways, and he said that in this case, he could give wings to his creativity. He said that suddenly he had an idea, used while Kalango was watching him, and Silver asked Kalango to hold that dry leaf and stands there. And Kalango takes it without understanding anything and looks at it strangely and asks him if hurry because he was standing like a tree trunk and asked him not to worry because he wouldn't deceive him. But Kalango was very suspicious. Then Kalango raised the sheet and stopped. He said that was it. He was supposed to stand like that. He said that was his little whip flying. He ends up throwing that thorny cactus with all his strength, but he misses a target and cuts off Kalango's tail. The bastard, bro, doesn't give in. The bastard ends up looking at his tail, all whipped, sliced, and the Proto apologizes because that really wasn't intentional. But then Proto gets nervous, asking what it is with that look on his face. He asks if he was really looking down on his older brother. That was just a mistake, so he apologized and ends up throwing 3 more thorny cacti, telling him to watch and learn. How did he hit the target? He really hit the sheet, but it wasn't the one Kalango was holding. It was the ones on the trees. He said that the problem was because the precision is a little wrong. But that's okay, practice will improve. Surely his aim is that Kalango ends up catching the insect and ends up eating it. And then he hits his head on one of the trees. I don't know why he starts looking up at it, and then he starts leaving with a liquid and a pot. The PR had a very small burn and said that he was very hungry and had doubts about why the little yellow one hadn't arrived yet. It looks like he turned into a plant, and he wonders why he felt hungry even though he was a plant. But then he looks to the side and says, speaking of the devil, look who's showing up. Proto, with a fake face, said that the little yellow one was learning quickly. Now he knows how to use the bowl since last time Yellow used his mouth to carry the liquid. And then suddenly Amerlinho drops several insects there. And the PR asked that next time he should catch these insects and find a tree bark to put them in. It is more hygienic. So the guy is a plant and is still complaining. But he said that okay, they were going to start shooting training that day. And that bearded man appears again, congratulating the host because he got a box. And again it was 10,000 points to open. He asked if he would want to open it. But the plate said that at that moment it was not to be saved for later. It said that the earth was arid and to let the yellow one get some water to help him grow with more vigor. After a while, he was playing with the thorns while drinking water. He said it was good to have someone feeding him, and this life was quite relaxed, the life he wanted. He ends up throwing a cactus at the leaf, but he makes the mistake again. Poor Kalango, because Proto will make mistakes again. Proto throws 3 more, but he makes mistakes again, and the PR was already getting upset because he had made a mistake. But he said that anyway, He had to practice more to improve because only then would he be able to hit. Proto tells the yellow boy to get all the ganger together again, and the one who was watching the two was that frog. He wanted revenge. Amerlinho was collecting again, but the frog was right behind him, and he wasn't very happy. Not to shout at Yellow to be careful, but he is attacked, and the frog's tongue ends up catching Amerlinho. Proto didn't know what to do while the frog slowly swallowed the yellow one, his little friend, his companion, his brother. Proto gets so angry that his eye turns red. At that moment, little Yellow was in the frog's stomach. He didn't know what to do, and he was still holding the ganger. He starts to simply place the ganger in the frog's stomach, and he didn't even want to know. Obviously, the frog feels his eyes widen, and he starts trying to spit everything out, but he doesn't. Not only that, he can finally get that ganger and the yellowness out of his mouth to understand that he spat out again, and he wonders what was going on with Yellowy. I wonder if he had a bad taste because he had already eaten it once. The frog ends up attacking Amerlinho from inside, while Amerlinho fell with his hands. Gangers along with the Proto commented that he once saw an online video of a frog swallowing an insect that farted. Just that. Then he finished with this insect's pins, and he starts saying that frogs eat something poisonous. What if they eat? They roared out of all this to clear their stomach. And he said that they would probably that's why, since Amerlinho was holding the ganger and Pra called Amerlinho, he asked him to go with ganger there quickly while the frog was behind him. The frog was quite furious, who ends up giving a super poo. Proto was also furious, asking how he dared to come back, calling him a subordinate because that time he wouldn't come out alive. He ends up giving a whip, but the frog dodges and ends up holding the root again, and he throws his tongue out to try to catch the Proto, but he realized he couldn't reach the Proto. He starts saying that he was trying the same move against him for the second time. It was obvious that it wasn't going to work, and he asks if he hadn't noticed the changes he had during that time. He said that his vines had become longer and stronger too, and he ends up tying the frog. The frog even tries to free itself, but he couldn't manage it. None, and the stop simply ends up lifting the frog and suddenly ends up putting the frog on the ground. The frog really received a critical blow, and Levanta again explained that it was not for thinking he can't deal with him just because he's a predator. He said he had a math problem. To him, if he spits out 5 ganger every day, he asks how many ganger he would have spat out in total after 10 days. The frog starts trying to break free, but the Proto launches him at all the gangers. He starts attacking the frog several times without stopping. He was angry. He was attacking the frog so much that even the yellow one gets scared. Then Proto lifts him by the leg, asking if he wouldn't recover this time. He starts tearing the frog apart, saying that even a big guy like that was knocked down by him, and he didn't expect Kang to do this to help him kill an enemy by hand. Otherwise, he couldn't have swallowed it. He ends up calling Amerlinho because he was going to share a gift since they were friends and they would eat together. Amerlinho was very happy, delighted that he had 1 silver. He said it tasted really good. He just wanted to know what the system would have, like a new box, maybe, but he didn't. He got no box for eating Yellowtail before, so he has to eat it all, but he was kinda right. And a little wrong appears. 2 boxes that would normally need 10,000 points each, and he said that it really worked. He got 2 boxes and not just 1, and he wonders why he didn't gain anything when he swallowed Amerlinho's tail last time, but that time he ate some pieces of it. Big Frog, he got 2 boxes, and the bearded man said that judged by the system that animal was killed by his hands, and that creature was eaten raw. And he said that for small creatures, the host can swallow with 1 bite. There is a 100% chance of getting a box, since smaller creatures need to be chewed. That chance of getting a box, however, also depends on luck. And he said that if luck was very bad, even if the host ate the whole frog, literally bursting his stomach, he could keep a box. and it appears another message congratulating Fentel again. He got another box and Prada is very happy with the 3 boxes he had won. He said it meant his luck was extremely good. Just a few bites he managed to get 3 boxes. But that guy had a strange look on his face and said that with great luck, he would get a bite by little friend in quotes, and Proda doesn't understand and asks what he wanted to say, while the guy said to look at he was even feeling disgusted with his master. After a while they both had a ball in their stomachs. He said he couldn't bear to eat anymore. Even Kalango was into it, and Pra calls the system a canine asking if he was doing it on purpose. He said that since he said that sentence before it didn't even break his stomach resulted in a box. That guy said that this was a problem with his luck and had nothing to do with him, and asked if now he wanted to open the boxes, but the plate said no, he didn't want to. He had no interest in opening them box at that moment, and he said that there was still so much left for him to eat. He said that if he couldn't taking care of that, such a large piece of meat would certainly attract carnivores, and later he could certainly be killed by them, and then he would say, oh, yes, one way I'm a genius. Proda says he could bury it and turn it into organic fertilizer. Like this, he would be able to pull nutrients from the earth. He ends up remembering that once his mother was covering a fish, she dug a hole and put him there. He asked his mother what she was making that little fish dig the hole and placing it near the tree. She said it was because of the microorganisms, and that is why it would decompose, and there it would become a mixture of carbon dioxide, water and other intoxicants there, and these substances could be absorbed and used by the fruit tree, making it more lush and the tastiest fruits. And he begins to look at its roots, saying then anyway the vines, there was no way they could dig the ground, but he could use the vines as a hand to pick up tools and thus achieve dig the soil. But the problem is to find some suitable tool for digging, and where could he find one tool like this, like a shovel? He was in the middle of nowhere, and he didn't even know if he was in the normal world where he had human beings. He called Amerlinho asking for help. He needed to find thick branches and thin stones, and even if they are flat. Then the yellow starts to come out slowly, and the Pero wonders if he had really understood his request. After a while Amerlinho came back, but he only had some twigs and a pebble, and he was all happy looking like a dinosaur. But then Proda says he told him to bring thick branches, and that one was very thin. It was for he could see because it would break with a poke. It was impossible to dig with it. And he said that this soil is very brittle and also hard, so it had to have something resistant. And then the Amerlinho looks at that broken branch and simply said that he understood and goes again. Proda said that the grass was clean, but when he was able to get some land, he said that it must only be shit of a dog is not possible, and the yellow one comes back, but he didn't have a branch. He had a trunk of a tree, practically, and he asks where he got this huge trunk. In fact, how he was able to carry it. That's when he puts the sheet in his face and says that it looks like he overestimated the little yellow one's intelligence. But then he realized he had a sharp bone and an arrowhead, and he was shocked. For a few moments he takes that arrowhead and says it was incredible. It was actually an arrow broken. It was obviously a little rusty, but the finish was still great. He said it could at least there may be humanoid creatures on that continent or in that world. Perhaps even other intelligent beings who can use tools and work with it. He said that this broken arrow bone can also be used as an arrow. It's quite sharp. It's a good weapon, and he said that if another frog were there, he would finally be able to stab at his belly. He told Amerlinho that those items were great, and threw him a bone asking him to use it for work and dig the ground to bury that frog. And so they start to dig the hole. The silver one asked for Amerlinho to hurry up and hold on like he was teaching, and then dig with all his strength. After a while, they had already made a giant crater, so he said everything was fine. For now, it was for drag the uneaten parts of the big bullfrog into that hole, and the little yellow one does that and starts trying pull using that frog's tongue, and after that he was jumping on the dirt mountain. The silver one starts looking and say that he couldn't smell blood, so it probably wouldn't attract carnivores that way. But the purpose, he wondered why he could smell blood. The TM Alphato plants will appear several system windows. He got point of evolution. He was concentrating and said that it seemed like nothing changed him. He just kept getting points for sunbathing, but he said that maybe he should be a little patient. Takes a while for the microorganisms to decompose the bullfrog's body. But then he remembers that he hadn't opened those 3 boxes, and he told the bearded man that he wanted to open them, and then that bearded man told the little master that as there were 3 boxes, he numbered the 3 carefully, and asked which one he wanted to open them first. Prota calls Yellow, and asks which one he thought they should open, A1 A2, or all TR had to do was choose the number. Then Yellow said 2, and then Prota told the bearded man to open it. Slush box 2 as the yellow one had said, and the bearded man congratulates the host. He got a new gene. The prickly gene was rank B, and the fusion type was the cull, and asked if he wanted to merge. The Preta was all happy, saying that Emerlinho was really very lucky, and asked to use the fusion while the bearded man took out his magic wand. He said fusion, and Prota realized that now his whips were made of thorns. He was very happy with this new skill, and said that he was now a real whip lightning, while the yellow one was very scared. The silver one ended up testing it, and it was really very strong. He said that that power was incredible, spectacular, and would probably be the enough to seriously injure the frog with a single blow. And then Prota asks the yellow one again, so he can go there, because there were still 2 boxes, number 1 and number 3, and he was supposed to choose, while the little yellow guy was talking that he chose number 3. But when he opened it, he only got 20,000 points from each of them. He said that 3 boxes only 1 skill, so there was a 33% chance, but he said he still well. The little yellow guy had a better chance than him of being able to open one of the boxes and find a skill. He said that with Kang go along with if thorny powders and broken arrows, even a sharp bone, his self-defense improved a lot. Some time passes and our little yellow one was running from a frog giant. Prota told him not to worry because now he was going to test his new ability, and the frog is totally grabbed by Prota's thorns, which in the end ends up breaking several pieces of flesh. Using that arrow spun by Prota, Yellow said that it was time to eat, and the 2 started to eat the meat, and they were very happy to eat that meat. But Prota notices something about him. The bearded man said that because he ate that meat he was getting a random box, and he could use 10,000 evolution points to open it. Plus it wasn't a box, it was 2, and Silver said that it wasn't bad to hunt one of those animals because he could get a lot of boxes. And then he said he was already full of food, and after a while he already had 5 boxes. He said that this time he had a lot luck, and it was obvious that now he would open the first time he opens the system. Congratulations on obtaining the plant gene sweet potato classification rank B. The type of fusion was roots, and the system. I asked him if he wanted to use fusion or to ask the bearded man what were the benefits of fusing this sweet potato in his gene. He ends up explaining to the little master that burying the rest of raw material in the ground to decompose as fertilizers like he did with the frog is not only time-consuming, but also unpleasant. He said that after fusing the sweet potato gene, the little master could quickly convert the food into nutrients stored in food roots, and he wonders what is the use of storing nutrients in the roots of wood. He explains that the nutrients stored in the roots can help them thrive even when they lack some food, water or minerals, and most important can heal his injuries and make him recover quickly. He is integrated, saying that could even heal injuries like a healing potion, and he ends up imagining himself in an RPG game that he holds a sword and a healing potion with his HP increasing. He said that then he was decided, and he wanted to merge a green energy that ended up dominating his entire body, but he realized that nothing had changed, except that the bearded man calls Silver asking if he couldn't eat anymore, so he should use his mind to control those roots and let it store the food. Silver said he wanted store food he wanted, and he tries to tell this to his mind to see if he can control these roots, and really roots start to appear from the ground, pulling the frog to the ground. He starts to say that it was incredible, he can feel it clearly, the roots wrapping around the food and pulling it into the soil, quickly breaking it into roots, transforming the medium that a wood to store nutrients. He said that this was very efficient, and there was no need for digging more holes aimlessly, even didn't have to worry about attracting other carnivorous animals when food wasn't available, was consumed. And the bearded man said that with this practice it would be as easy as controlling his vineyards without efforts is smooth, and in the future he wanted to use this new skill during hunts, experience the healing effect, and if it worked well it's as if he gained an extra life, and currently it is only a little bit of health he gets, but he would get stronger one way or another, and a while a red snake passes by attacking Proto. He tries to defend himself with his thorns. He tries to wrap the snake around holding her with his thorns, and he really succeeds. He ends up attacking her on the ground, and while the PR is there, Amerlinho appears with a sharp bone and ends up hitting that snake with that bone, and in the end she was all argons there on the floor. While the plate said that it was nothing Malu, he said that they were learning from mistakes and getting things right, the snake in the right spot. He said that although it is a poisonous snake, it seems that the snake's venom did not affect him. But then something happens. A shine from his roots ends up appearing, and he commented that his healing and regeneration capacity was truly impressive. But he said that at that moment, it was the meal time and a while passes, and it starts to rain. The guy even commented that it was raining, and it was the first time that this happened, while the bearded man had a pink umbrella on top of a box, which he ends up using his thorns to kind of make a roof, and he said he had already finished eating, so he would help the little yellow one sheltering from the rain while he continued eating, and the guy said that he was starting to feel him. As if he already had a home, he was eating, drinking water, having his savings, and a pet to help him. They were little brothers. He said all he needed was a beautiful girl, a girlfriend. But then suddenly he noticed something, a lip with lipstick, and it was obviously the bearded man. He asked if the young master would like him to be his girlfriend. But then Proto throws a thorn in his side, telling him to go away. He said that he was just a little settled and was already starting to have nightmares. He wonders if in his current form he really needs a girlfriend. Maybe he should look for a female plant. A while passes, and the PR even commented that time flew by in the blink of an eye. He suddenly became a talking plant. However, he merged with a thorn. He even obtained 3 vital roots, essentially 3 roots that had blood, meaning he could heal himself 3 times. He said that the little yellow one hasn't come back from hunting yet, and was a little tired. He looks back and asks if the yellow one had already returned, but he realized that it wasn't the yellow one. It was something strange. It was a human. He wonders if there really were humans in that world. He starts screaming, saying that finally he found someone of his own species. Oh wait, he's not human anymore. He screamed, saying his name was Wong. He was there, but then he looks at his claws and says, "Wait, I'm a talking plant with a big mouth. I really wasn't human anymore." He said that regardless of that, they were supposed to greet each other. He could communicate no problem because he didn't know anything about that world, and he had a lot of questions. That guy starts to look at the ground and says, "Ah, there's one more here." Proto saw him from afar. He wonders if he wasn't there shouting self-sufficiently. Why can't he hear him? Maybe it's because he was so small that his voice is too small and low. He wonders what that guy was doing. That guy, nothing more and nothing less, was collecting some plants. He said that he didn't expect to find a precious antidote there, and he realized that he was picking herbs. That human even started picking other plants. He ended up recognizing one and said that in the truth existed this type of flower, imtal, the main ingredient to refine the elixir of immortality. Proto starts looking at him, saying that this was bad. In fact, he was a flower at that moment, pretty unique in that area. He wonders if that guy wouldn't try to dig him up and use him as a medicine or something. The human said that there must be other valuable herbs in that area too, so he would continue searching. Proto was very nervous, saying that the human was looking at him, and he was hoping he wouldn't go there. But then the human was already watching the Proto, saying, this flower is interesting." The human puts his hand on his chin, saying that it was very strange because he has no impression of this flower. He has never seen it. So he opens a book and says there was no record of it too. He ends up smiling. He said that maybe he had discovered a new herb and he needed to take it quickly to research. It could be an incredible plant that could give some power or something. But Proto was nervous, sweating. He wanted the guy to go away and never come back. When Proto told him to keep his dirty hands away from him, his thorns ended up protecting him. The guy is already nervous because he was cut by a plant that wasn't even registered. He didn't know if it was poisonous, and this strange flower he talked about actually had a lot of thorns. He said this would be interesting before, but at that moment he had to be careful because he would be stung if he went soft. He wonders why he just heard a very low, fresh scream, and Proda already knew that his situation was bad. He started saying that this is the difference between such strength between a human and a plant. He tried so hard to protect himself, but nothing practically happened. He didn't even realize that the PR was trying to hold him, but the human just felt like he had been scratched. He said that in the face of all this strength, he is just a fragile, weak person without any protection. But before being ripped off the ground, that human notices something else. He asks if he had already returned. That was his son, apparently. He was carrying a gigantic pink move. That man stood up and said that it was great, and said that he had already achieved what they were looking for so quickly. But the guy didn't understand why the boy didn't answer him, and the boy told him to run. Then he was discovered by the dragon mother when he was stealing the egg just now, and the guy is in shock because there was a dragon behind them. When he looked up, there was already a gigantic tree, which in this case was the dragon. His son said that it was already coming. It was a really terrible dragon, while the boy shouted that it was the mother dragon and she was already close. But then the guy said that he should wait because he had to find out that she went first. Proda starts to think that it would be better for the guy to die, even if he was thinking about Proda, even in the face of this situation where a dragon was after the two. But the boy asks what the hell he was doing picking a simple flower at that time. They had to run, otherwise they would be killed by a dragon. Then the guy said that it was true that his life was more important than a simple flower. He said that he would come back to dig next time. Proda gets very angry. He still said that they still thought about digging it up, studying it, and using it as medicine. He said no, he couldn't just let him go, so he couldn't give them another chance to threaten him again. He ends up throwing his attack together with the mother dragon. He said that they must pay the price, and certainly they would never step there again. He ends up grabbing the adventurer's leg. He is very surprised that there was something stuck to his foot, and it was Proda's thorns. He wonders what was happening because the two were grabbed and they would practically be caught if they didn't let go. Proda starts to dig up because he is a plant and he was holding humans who were running. He starts to scream, but he didn't want to. There's no way to let go of those two. In the end, those two end up falling to the ground and the egg also. The egg rolls away and ends up entering a bush, and the mother dragon wasn't happy at all. She was nervous. That guy said something made them stumble while the boy asked where his dragon egg was. The mother dragon was right on top of them. They practically start screaming for help while the guy told him to run as fast as possible because they would be caught. But in the end, they both end up being captured by the mother dragon while they were asking for her to release him, and the other asked someone for help. The boy didn't know what to do, and he ended up taking his sword. He ends up cutting the mother dragon, who ends up screaming and consequently releasing both of them. The father is even surprised that they were released and they end up falling to the ground, but this made the mother dragon furious even more. This time she went towards them to bite. In the background, Proda said that she only heard one. "Oh, I don't want to die," and he wondered if they both finally died because he killed them indirectly anyway. Because if it weren't for them having arrested them and holding them on the leg, they wouldn't have died because they were going to escape. He was quite nervous looking at his hand, but he starts to think that if they had escaped, they would certainly come back to dig him up. Consequently, he would die, so he was just defending himself. He had to keep fighting to stay alive. There was no way. But then he realizes something. The dragon egg was very close to him, and he wonders if when the mother dragon returns, she would step on him. But then he realizes she was coming, and she quickly passes by his side. He watches her leave without understanding anything while he then looks at the egg that was in the bush. He puts the leaf on his forehead and says that it was just coming out and leaving the egg behind. He starts to scream, calling her, "Aunt, your son is still there," he was commenting. "It's the first time a dragon has become a mother, so maybe that's why she was careless, just thinking about killing the dragon." Enemy and feel good, but he wasn't still after the egg. He said to be careful not to break it accidentally, the egg, and he was going to try to get that egg, but he realized that he couldn't. He was too far away and he couldn't reach. But then our little yellow one suddenly appears and he keeps looking at Proto and then looks at the egg. Proto ends up calling the little yellow one to try and get him to push the dragon egg towards him.